morning at 11:30 Central on American Family Radio.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it.
My family and my name have been totally and permanently destroyed by vicious and false additional accusations.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020.
This confirmation process has become a national disgrace.
You've got nothing to apologize for.
But you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy.
To my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I have seen in my time in politics.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Bryan Fischer.
Welcome to this Friday edition of Focal Point. Welcome aboard, as Brian calls it, the USS Focal Point. I am guest hosting today. My name is Walker Wildmon. Brian is out traveling on American Family Association business. He'll be back in the captain's chair next week, the latter half of next week. Glad to be with you today this Friday. A lot of news, a lot of things going on in Washington, D.C. We're going to cover all of that. And we're going to cover what happened yesterday after the show. What happened yesterday after Focal Point, after we got off the air. What happened in the U.S. Senate yesterday and what that means moving forward with Brett Kavanaugh's nomination and hopefully confirmation to the to the U.S. Supreme Court. Before we jump into the news of the day, I want to cover a few things. First off, you can watch the show on Facebook and YouTube. Facebook and YouTube, you can watch the show there. And also, you can catch the podcast at afr.net, afr.net. And you know, there's some concerns out there that Facebook and Twitter and others are censoring conservative voices. Well, the best way to get around the censorship is to go directly to our website, afr.net, and you can get all of the content there, all of the content at afr.net. Lastly, you can download the American Family Radio app on your smartphone or your tablet device and listen anywhere so long as you have an internet connection. One other note I want to talk about is this event that we're having next week in Columbus, Ohio, October 2nd. My brother, Wesley Wildmon, Ed Vitagliano from Today's Issues, and your own Bryan Fischer from this show, Focal Point, will be in the Columbus, Ohio area next week, and on October 2nd, to be specific, which is next Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday, beginning at 6:30 p.m. in the Columbus, Ohio area. That's all I'm going to tell you about the event because you need to register in order to attend the event. It's a free event, but you need to register first. So here is the website to go and register for our event next week in Columbus, Ohio, next Tuesday night in Columbus, Ohio, afa.net, afa.net/Dublin, afa.net/Dublin, DUBLIN. Go register, sign up to attend that event. And Bryan Fischer will be there along with many others from American Family Radio and American Family Association. Well, we have some breaking news going on in Washington right now, and I didn't know that this is how it was going to go, but the Senate Judiciary Committee has just voted they have voted favorably to send Judge Brett Kavanaugh's name to the full Senate for a confirmation vote. And what that means there is 11 in a vote, 11-10. Basically, the 11 Republicans sent Brett Kavanaugh's name to the full Senate for a confirmation vote. But what happened there, if you've been watching this, is Senator Jeff Flake just pulled a John McCain. And as a matter of fact, he actually did something that's even more shameful than what John McCain did. Because when John McCain did his thumbs down last year in the Senate to not repeal Obamacare, you could argue, well, that didn't really affect one's reputation and one's name. It was a simple no vote on a policy decision on the Senate floor. Well, what Jeff Flake just did, yes, he voted to send Brett Kavanaugh's name to the full Senate, but here's what his demand was. A full 1-week FBI investigation into the innocent Brett Kavanaugh. That's what shameful Jeff Flake just demanded. And I have no other words that I can say on American Family Radio to explain how despicable what Jeff Flake just did on national television in the U.S. Senate chamber. Absolutely, absolutely disgusting that Jeff Flake is caving to demands by the sleazy Democrats. He's caving to their demands that the FBI, which already has corruption problems themselves, do a full review for 1 full week, another week of delays, before he will vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. Jeff Flake's name has been permanently destroyed, just like Brett Kavanaugh's, because Jeff Flake is no longer even anything of a decent person or a Republican. He has no more credibility. He is officially, Jeff Flake is a Democrat. Jeff Flake is a Democrat. He's kowtowing to the Democratic demands, and Jeff Flake ought to be ashamed of himself. But we're going to jump right in, and I'm going to tell you what you can do later in the show to call your senator and to get them to vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. But before we do all that, I want to get into the hearing from yesterday. Let's jump right into clip 1. This is Brett Kavanaugh's opening statements yesterday before the Senate Judiciary Committee on national television. This is clip 1. Let's listen to Brett Kavanaugh.
Allegation appeared. I told this committee that I wanted a hearing as soon as possible to clear my name. I demanded a hearing for the very next day. Unfortunately, it took the committee 10 days to get to this hearing. In those 10 long days, as was predictable and as I predicted, my family and my name have been totally and permanently destroyed by vicious and false additional accusations. The 10-day delay has been harmful to me and my family, to the Supreme Court, and to the country.
Well, there you have it. That's Brett Kavanaugh's opening statements there. And he's right. And you know, one thing I noticed yesterday that just dawned on me, and I know that this is, from a Christian standpoint, this is a spiritual assault on things that are good and decent in our country, such as the sanctity of human life in the womb and outside of the womb. But yesterday, the battle was between light and dark, truth and lies, good and evil. But it wasn't just that. Yesterday's fight in the Senate was a battle between God and Satan. And if you watch the hearing, then you know what I'm talking about. And people who do not know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior will not be able to understand this because you do not have the Holy Spirit. But for those of us who have the Holy Spirit, and we can discern and we can see when Satan is at work and when God is at work, you could see and feel the presence of both evil and good in the Senate yesterday. And we're going to talk more about that after the break. A lot going on in Washington. Thanks for tuning in to Focal Point. First segment down, 3 more to go. We'll take your calls towards the end of the show. Stay tuned, and we'll talk more about this after the break.
AFR has been an incredible encouragement to me over the years. I start off my day in the Word and prayer, and when I get in my truck to go to work, listen to the inspiring music. Each day puts me in an attitude of worship. I love my God, I love my country, and the steady infusion of truth and news of what's going on in this country feeds my prayer life. AFR gives me the information and the news with shows like Today's Issues, Bryan Fischer, Washington. They bring the right perspective of the events that's going on in my world. Thank you for fighting the fight and lighting the fire under me.
God is using American Family Radio to motivate Christians across America to help restore our nation's biblical foundations. Please partner with us in this critical mission during our 3-day share-a-thon beginning Tuesday, October 16th.
A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Recently, tech titans have sought to minimize the access people have to conservative content. But what we've seen so far is just the beginning. At an off-the-record event where the usual regressive media suspects were gathered, Mark Zuckerberg announced Facebook will dial up the intensity of its efforts to minimize access to, quote, controversial political content, end quote. Any wonder as to what type of content Zuckerberg deems to be controversial?
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Bryan Fischer on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to Focal Point. My name is Walker Wildmon, and I am sitting in for Bryan Fischer today. We're going to jump right back into the content. And, some of the media personalities yesterday were criticizing, and some of them were making fun of Brett Kavanaugh's emotions during the Senate hearing yesterday. And I think the fact that his voice was broken at times and he teared up at other times, I think that is nothing to be ashamed of. Because Brett Kavanaugh's name, his character, his family have been destroyed by the Democrats along with Jeff Flake. His name has been destroyed, and that is an emotional topic. That is an emotional topic, and he has been accused of things that if done, they are reprehensible. And he has been falsely accused of these things. And I'm going to play clip 2 here. This is another part of Brett Kavanaugh's opening statements. Listen to this. This is clip 2.
This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. The Constitution gives the Senate an important role in the confirmation process, but you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy.
Wow, there you have it. That's clip 2. Brett Kavanaugh says you've traded out advice and consent to search and destroy. And I think that phrase right there, that clip is going to go down in the history books, just like Clarence Thomas called what happened to him in 1991 a high-tech lynching. I think what we saw yesterday was the Democrats' strategy to search and destroy. And here's the thing. We know the games that the Democrats play. We know that the Democrats are dishonest, they have no moral standard, and the ends justify the means. We know that about the Democrats. They have no shame in what they do. But I think here's who owes Brett Kavanaugh an apology. I think Jeff Flake owes Brett Kavanaugh personally an apology. I think Bob Corker owes Brett Kavanaugh an apology personally. And any other U.S. Senator, any other Republican U.S. Senator that has played along and gone along to the Democrats' sleazy smear campaign and character assassination against Brett Kavanaugh. That's who owes Brett Kavanaugh an apology. And Jeff Flake just 15 minutes ago extended the Democrats' sleazy smear campaign. He extended it. He gave them a waiver to continue the smear campaign for another week. And so Brett Kavanaugh and his family are having to endure this, as Lindsey Graham called it, unethical and immoral smear campaign. Judge Brett Kavanaugh is told, you're just going to have to be drugged through the mud, put up with it. But moving on here, I'm convinced that the reason this is all going on is because there are some Republican senators who are not confident in voting for Brett Kavanaugh. I think if a week or two ago, if we would have had enough votes to pass Brett Kavanaugh on the full Senate floor, I think we would not be going through this circus. But I think it's because of Jeff Flake and others that we're even having to go through this circus. The last clip I want to play from Brett Kavanaugh's, or one of the last clips I want to play from Brett Kavanaugh's hearing yesterday, is when he talks about this orchestrated political hit and revenge on behalf of the Clintons. This is clip 3. Let's listen.
This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups. This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. The consequences will be with us for decades. This grotesque and coordinated character assassination will dissuade competent and good people of all political persuasions from serving our country. And as we all know, in the United States political system of the early 2000s, what goes around comes around. I am an optimistic guy. I always try to be on the sunrise side of the mountain, to be optimistic about the day that is coming. But today, I have to say that I fear for the future.
Well, that's Judge Brett Kavanaugh saying that this has implications for decades to come. And another horrendous news story going on regarding the same topic is the fact that the left, these Democrats, as I call it, the Antifa, the Democrats are the party of Antifa. And so I'm going to start calling them Antifa Democrats. The Antifa Democrats are now talking about assassinating and killing their political opponents. This is the level that this is getting to. This is dangerous, folks. We've seen representatives of the Trump administration run out of restaurants, shouted down, yelled at, and now we have these communists / Democrats / Antifa. They're all the same, folks. They're all the same. If you condone the behavior, you're just as guilty. And the Democrats, I don't hear one Democrat that is upset that how violent these people are getting, that is denouncing this behavior. Let me read from this news story. This is from pjmedia.com. We'll post a link on the Focal Point Facebook page. But the headline is, Communist Planning Armed Insurrection on Twitter. And the article goes on to say, communist agitators took to Twitter this week to brainstorm strategies for violent armed insurrection against their perceived enemies. Dr. Bones is the one who started putting this stuff out. He's the co-host of a far-left podcast I'm reading from the news story. And he started the conversation with his 5,000-plus Twitter followers. And he asked the question, quote, hey, quick little question for military-minded lefties. Should leftists train / organize an insurgent focus where they blend into civilian population for potential attacks, or a more militia structure focused on holding / maintaining turf? And this guy named Dr. Bones went on to suggest that fellow travelers, fellow Democrats, organize, quote, hidden cells and focus on ambushes and assassinations to bleed, quote, right-leaning forces dry. So there you have it. Where are the Democrats saying that this is unacceptable? I'll guarantee you that you will not find one Democrat. If you do, then I'll come on the show and I'll apologize or recant. But I'll guarantee you, you will not find one Democrat to denounce this. Not one. Not one Democrat will denounce this. You know why? Because they're fine with it. They've already said it. If good people have to go down in the midst of this righteous call that they have, who cares? Who cares? And some folks don't want to try to tie this together, but their blood has already been shed. Steve Scalise was shot on a baseball field a year ago by a Democrat, by a Bernie Sanders supporter. And the media doesn't want to make that link. Even conservative media outlets will say, well, you know, we just can't connect the two. We just don't know. No, this is clear. The Democrats are agitating violence against conservatives and Republicans because it's a smear campaign and it's a fear campaign. And blood has already been shed in this civil war that we're having now. Blood has already been shed. The Democrats and their dangerous rhetoric, they're responsible, and it's time that Democrats start apologizing for this and start denouncing it, because if you don't, we're going to have more people, God forbid, we're going to have more people like Steve Scalise, because the Democrats ramp up their rhetoric and they basically call us all Nazis, racists, sexist, homophobes, etc. And they expect that their lefty supporters are not going to take action on their dangerous rhetoric. But I'm going to move on here to back to these hearings. This is the last Brett Kavanaugh clip before we move to other clips. This is clip 4. Brett Kavanaugh. This is a heart-wrenching story here of Brett Kavanaugh's daughter. Listen closely.
I intend no ill will to Dr. Ford and her family. The other night, Ashley and my daughter Liza said their prayers, and little Liza, all of 10 years old, said to Ashley, we should pray for the woman. It's a lot of wisdom from a 10-year-old. We mean no ill will.
That's Brett Kavanaugh there, breaking down into tears after reciting the story of his daughter just this past week while her dad is being dragged through the mud and politically and character-wise being assassinated in public and having all of these disgusting claims repeated over and over and over again on national television. Brett Kavanaugh's 10-year-old daughter says, maybe we should pray for Dr. Ford. And I think that right there is a sign of where Brett Kavanaugh, his heart and his family, where they are on this. They're broken, folks. They're mad, and I don't blame them, but they're also broken. And the brokenness is not going to stop and not going to be healed anytime soon. Thank you, Jeff Flake. And that's the point in me going after Jeff Flake so hard at the beginning of the show is this. The Democrats have committed their heinous acts. Everybody knows it. And we were about to be moving on as a country until Jeff Flake 30 minutes ago in the Senate said, I think the FBI needs to investigate that, and until they do, I'm not voting for Brett Kavanaugh. And so thanks to Jeff Flake, Brett Kavanaugh and his family and his daughters are going to have to be dragged through the mud for another 7 days because Jeff Flake is so self-righteous that he's going to team up with the Democrats in their character assassination of Brett Kavanaugh. Plain and simple. Some folks can say, well, he's trying to be bipartisan. You know, he's trying to hear both sides. He's trying to be, sympathetic. No, not buying it anymore. Maybe early on, not buying it anymore. Jeff Flake is now a Democrat, plain and simple, and he's carrying out and assisting and carrying the water bucket for the Democrats and their sleazy smear campaign of Brett Kavanaugh. Thanks for tuning in to Focal Point. We're going to be back next segment, and then we're going to take your calls the last segment. Stay tuned to Focal Point. More of what's going on in Washington, D.C. and what you can do after the break.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. As we watch in morbid fascination the sad spectacle of human tragedy to which Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings have sunk, one common denominator looms large over everything, but is unnamed: alcohol. Starting in the early 1970s, when the legal voting age was lowered from 21 to 18, many states began lowering the legal age to drink to 18 as well. This remained the legal age until the mid-1980s, when, due to congressional action, all 50 states raised it again to 21. Binge drinking among U.S. high school students peaked in the early 1980s, precisely when Judge Kavanaugh and his accuser were high school students. Adolescents are at an even greater risk of binge drinking than adults. Binge drinking causes blackouts and memory loss much more quickly in not fully developed teenage brains, and depresses impulse control much more quickly than it is depressed in adult brains. Whatever the outcome of Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation process, we all should heed the warning that demon rum is called demon rum for a reason. As UCal San Diego psychologist Susan Tappert put it, quote, "There are still large numbers of teenagers and high school kids who engage in drinking and partying that is really dangerous. Even if you emerge from the evening unscathed, you're doing some harm to your body, and you're definitely doing some harm to your brain," end quote. Words that every parent should seek to indelibly imprint on their teenage children. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Bryan Fischer
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Bryan Fischer's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
All right, welcome back to Focal Point, this Friday edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. My name is Walker Wildmon. I'm sitting in for Bryan Fischer. He'll be back in the captain's chair later next week, in the latter half of next week, Thursday, I believe. And so glad to have you with us. A couple ways to keep up with the show: Focal Point /Bryan Fischer on Facebook, or you can visit the Focal Point a YouTube page and watch the show, the YouTube channel. You can watch the show each weekday there, and you can also go back and watch previous shows. So multiple ways to keep up with Focal Point and keep up with American Family Radio. Lastly, afr.net, afr.net. Go visit our website, listen to past shows, and you can stream live American Family Radio at our website, afr.net. One quick story along this whole topic of Brett Kavanaugh and what's going on in Washington. This story is out of Washington Times, and kudos to Jeff for this one. But Brett Kavanaugh, here's the headline: Brett Kavanaugh, Christine Blasey Ford, and the links to George Soros. And the article goes on to say that there was a, let's see here. All right, so here's the connection. George Soros, this group called Demand Justice, which is established in 2018, is a part of the Open Society Public Policy Center, which is one of George Soros, his organizations. And then the Democrat attorney for Dr. Ford is a lady by the last name of Katz, K-A-T-Z. She is a hefty, this is a quote from the story, Katz is also a hefty Democratic donor, giving thousands of dollars over the years to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and other lefty candidates, as Front Page Magazine reported. But going back to Ms. Ford herself, she is the vice chair, Dr. Ford is the vice chair of the Project on Government Oversight, an organization that has been directly funded by Soros and his Open Society Foundation. And so two connections there. Katz, the attorney for Dr. Ford, is a hefty Democratic donor, and then Dr. Ford is vice chair of one of George Soros' groups. And we wonder where all this is coming from. Wouldn't be surprised if Dr. Ford and her attorneys are going to get a couple $100,000 in the next few weeks in a wire transfer via the banks from George Soros himself, or I'm sure they'll hide it and give it through another organization. Nonetheless, wouldn't be surprised if it turned out that Dr. Ford and her attorneys were paid by George Soros to smear, destroy, and assassinate Brett Kavanaugh's character. One person who had, other than Brett Kavanaugh himself, one person who had a sense of righteous indignation and a sense of a clear understanding of what was going on yesterday is Senator Lindsey Graham. I want to play clip 5 here. This is Senator Lindsey Graham, his first part of his statement, talking about how disgusting this process has been. Let's listen.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Are you a gang rapist?
No.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham.
Wow. That's Senator Lindsey Graham. And you know, when I look here.
It sounds like the real Spartacus just showed up.
Yeah, you're right, Jeff. And I don't try to spiritualize every aspect of our daily life. For example, I thought of this earlier. You know, if I have a flat tire, I don't blame Satan. I mean, sometimes things just happen and you have a flat tire. If I go right over a nail, I'm going to get a flat tire. It doesn't mean that Satan is coming after me. But folks, if you cannot see the spiritual aspect in this, I don't know what to say. But it was as if a spirit of truth came upon Lindsey Graham yesterday, and it absolutely blew me away. I was watching this yesterday live, and the Democrats were doing their old thing, and they actually looked very shameful. Dianne Feinstein was looking down, looking other ways. She wouldn't look at Brett Kavanaugh directly. And all the Democrats were kind of slouched down in their chairs. I mean, they were shamed. They were shamed. Brett Kavanaugh, in his opening statements, he put them to shame. And it was visible in the looks on their faces. But the point I was getting at there is that Lindsey Graham we were all saying, finally, someone speaks some truth to these people. The Republicans were trying to let the female prosecutor ask her little questions, and it was getting nowhere. It was a big waste of time. Finally, I think Lindsey Graham said enough is enough. It's time to speak the truth. Let's go to clip 6. This is Lindsey Graham's latter half of his statements. Clip 6, I'm sorry. Let's listen.
One thing I can tell you, you should be proud of. Ashley, you should be proud of this. That you raised a daughter who had the good character to pray for Dr. Ford. To my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I have seen in my time in politics. You want this seat? I hope you never get it. I hope you're on the Supreme Court. That's exactly where you should be. And I hope that the American people will see through this charade.
There you have it. That's Senator Lindsey Graham there. And a couple things I want to point out is that here's a couple quotes from Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday. Talking to the Democrats, he said, "Boy, y'all want power, but I hope you never get it." And the reason he says that is the reason many of us are thinking the same thing, is because if they will drag Brett Kavanaugh in front of the whole world, if they'll drag him through this, imagine what they will do if they are in power. Because they have no, get this, the Democrats have no moral standard. And don't get me wrong here, the Republicans are not perfect either. I'm one of the chief critics of the Republicans. I get fed up with the Republicans because they campaign on one thing and do another. And they promise us this and they promise us that, and they keep funding Planned Parenthood, the baby killers. I'm just as fed up with the Republicans, but get this. At least the Republican Party has a voting bloc to keep them morally accountable. And it's you and it's me. It's the Christian voting bloc that 86% voted for Donald Trump. It is us that actually keep the Republican Party at least semi on a moral straight path. We keep them accountable. But with the Democrats, there is no accountability. The people who vote for the Democrats are okay with this. They think this is great. The ends justify the means. And so that's why I'm going after the Democrats here. And another quote he said, this is Senator Lindsey Graham, he told Brett Kavanaugh, quote, "If you're looking for a fair process, you came to the wrong town at the wrong time." And I think he's exactly right. This has been far from a fair process. But we must continue to pray for Judge Brett Kavanaugh. And what I mentioned before in the first segment is how you can take action. Here's what you need to do. You need to call your senator. You need to email your senator. Calls are actually more effective. And you need to urge them to vote for Brett Kavanaugh and vote for Brett Kavanaugh now. No more delays, no more waiting, no more letting the Democrats run Washington. It's time to vote on Brett Kavanaugh. Here's how you can do it. AFA.net. Visit our website, AFA.net. And on the homepage there, right at the front, in the middle, you'll see Action Alert. Let your senator know that it is time to confirm Kavanaugh. AFA.net. I encourage you to go there, take action, demand that your senator vote on Brett Kavanaugh and vote on him immediately. But moving on here, another news story that I wanted to mention here, another angle of how dangerous this is getting for Republicans and conservatives. This is out of the Washington Times, another news story. Senate Judiciary Committee Republicans, their addresses, phone numbers were released yesterday on Wikipedia. And this is a process, or people call this doxing. And it's where you splash out sensitive information on the internet because you don't like what somebody's doing. And so several Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday had their home addresses, phone numbers released to the public on their Wikipedia pages during Thursday's hearing on Judge Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. And guess where this came from? This is according to the Washington Times. This came from the U.S. House of Representatives building. This came from a computer within the U.S. House of Representatives office building. And so someone in our government, working for some congressman, congresswoman, logged into their computer. And see, this is how when I say this, the Democrats have no shame. They do this stuff and they don't care if anybody finds out. They logged in. You can track the IP address. They logged into Wikipedia. The whole world can see the IP addresses that make certain changes on Wikipedia pages. They logged in, splashed all this sensitive information out there, and logged out. But that came from a U.S. House of Representatives office. And so somebody's going to be getting a knock on the door from the FBI in the coming days for putting this information out there. And the reason it's dangerous is not because people will show up and picket and do signs in front of their houses. No, it's because we have the communists that are planning to assassinate Republicans. That's why it's dangerous, because we have communists planning to assassinate Republicans. And where are the Democrats on this? MIA, missing in action. You're listening to Focal Point. Here's the number to call in, 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840. We'll take calls after the break. Thanks for being with us.
from the spiritual perspective, we are not fighting for victory, we're fighting from victory. The victory's already been won. We are called to be strong so that we can stand in the victory that's already been won for us by Jesus Christ.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his new series, Overcomer, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
It's common sense. Don't touch a hot stove. And look both ways before crossing a busy street. It's common sense. Men don't belong in women's restrooms or changing areas. Target is ignoring common sense. Target continues their reckless and dangerous policy, allowing men into their women's restrooms and changing areas. Don't shop at Target. Protect your wives, daughters, and family. Now that's common sense. Sign the pledge to boycott Target. Visit afa.net.
Listen to this ancient Chinese proverb. If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. We sometimes regret the past and we often worry about the future. So how do we live in the present in a way that gives us peace? The prophet Isaiah has the key. He wrote, "You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you." If our mind stays focused on God today, we will worry about neither the past nor the future. This is David Jeremiah, encouraging you to get on the road to new life. Discover God's peace on Route 66.
Route 66, driving the word home. Log on to Route66Life.com. Start your journey home today.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Bryan Fischer.
Bryan Fischer.
All right, welcome back to Focal Point, this Friday edition. Really busy day going on in Washington, D.C. We've talked about the Kavanaugh hearing, the aftermath of that hearing, and how now we have two Republican senators who are now Democrats. We have Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, and we have Senator Susan Collins of Maine. Both of those are jointly calling for the FBI, which already is struggling with credibility problems at the top. They want the FBI to completely redo a background check and take an entire week and delay this Brett Kavanaugh vote another week. And so the point I'm making here is we're not just fighting the Democrats in Washington. We're fighting the Republicans, some of the Republicans, specifically Jeff Flake and Susan Collins, and now Lisa Murkowski. That's the fight here. Let me correct that. It is Senator Jeff Flake and Lisa Murkowski who have publicly said an FBI investigation is needed. Susan Collins has remained a little bit quiet on this. We'll see where she comes out. But to correct that, it's Lisa Murkowski and Jeff Flake who are publicly calling for the FBI to investigate. Which means that Lisa Murkowski and Jeff Flake have joined the Democrats. They are a part of the Democrats' resistance against President Trump. And that is what's going on in Washington today. We're going to go to the phones, but before we go to the phones, I may need to actually pull up the computer so I can see who I'm talking to here. We'll wait. We'll let the phones fill up a little bit more. But you know, folks, this has gone beyond normalcy. This is not the normal riffraff in Washington that we're seeing. This is anarchy. You have hundreds of people who've been arrested at the U.S. Capitol because they've been protesting, shouting. They've been rushing and basically taking over these congressmen and these senators, taking over their offices. And so this is what happens when the Democrats and their power is being threatened. Because here's the thing, and we all know this, and the thing is that the Democrats have relied on the judicial system for their tyranny. They've used the Supreme Court and the federal judiciary to take over our country, basically, from a policy standpoint. And they use these out-of-control judges. Bryan talks about this all the time. These black-robed rogue judges, the Democrats have used them in this position for years. Back to Roe v. Wade, they've used it to implement and force their agenda on the American people. And now this whole issue is beginning to boomerang. You're seeing us, I say us, you're seeing Donald Trump and the people who elected him, you're beginning to see the judiciary start to be actually restored to a sense of integrity and constitutionality. And the Democrats tremble to think that they could lose control of what has been the most tyrannical portion of government, the judicial branch, the last 40 years. We're going to go to Macy in Ohio and let somebody else talk than me. I'm kind of worn out. Macy in Ohio, welcome to Focal Point.
Hi, Walker. My name is Macy, and I'm 22, so I'm considered a millennial. But I have a comment to make. I've been seeing a lot of stuff on Facebook from my Democratic friends, and they say things like, oh, it's okay for men to cry, you know, men should be okay to be upset. And I just think there's a double standard with Judge Kavanaugh there, and they tear him down for actually showing emotion.
Yeah, that's a good point, Macy. And another thing is, I'll let you go and I'll comment on that over the phone, over the radio, but you're exactly right. You know, when Senator Cory Booker, look at me there, that's his new name, Bookie. Senator Cory Booker, when he cries, when he does these fake tears, acting like he's just so torn over this whole process, when Cory Booker cries, nobody says anything. Nobody says anything. The Democrats don't say anything. But Brett Kavanaugh, who's been assassinated from a character standpoint, he's been assassinated politically, and the Democrats and these talking heads, the talking snake media, as Bryan calls them, they've been going after Brett Kavanaugh because he dares show emotion at the hearing yesterday. Rob in Louisiana. Rob, welcome to Focal Point.
Hey, man. How are you doing?
Hey, you doing well, Rob. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. No, my comment really, we make it so much about the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, but truly that's not even what the fight's about. It's an attack on our Christian faith, on our Christian values, and I think we need to be talking more about that than we really do the political side of it, because ultimately God has the final word, and He is going to have the final word. So anyway, that's just where I'm at, man. I appreciate you taking my call.
All right, Rob, I very much appreciate that, and you're exactly right. And Bryan Fischer is exactly right. He covered this all last week. He had prayer. He had half of the show, multiple days. He covered and bathed Judge Kavanaugh in prayer, because we all understand that this is a spiritual attack. And some might disagree with me on this, but I think, and others have said this, that this boils down to one issue, and that is whether our country can continue killing babies unmercifully. Whether our country can continue killing over 1 million babies in their mother's womb year after year. Over 40 or 50 million babies have died in the womb since Roe v. Wade in 1973. And I think this spiritual battle we're seeing here is about whether the Democrats can continue killing babies without pause, without any restrictions. And don't get me wrong here. I don't think, even if Brett Kavanaugh gets on the federal bench, on the Supreme Court, I don't think Roe versus Wade, I think Roe versus Wade could be overturned or could be limited. I think abortion could be very much limited with Brett Kavanaugh on the court if a case comes up. But as far as our country completely banning abortion, all 50 states, I don't think that's likely to happen. It could happen if the Supreme Court ruled that life begins at conception like it should. But see, the Democrats know that Roe versus Wade is likely not going to be completely overturned. There might be some rights given back to the states, but the left doesn't care. The Democrats don't care. They want abortion on demand. Hillary Clinton did not deny it when Donald Trump said, "You want abortion up to 9 months, don't you?" And she did not deny it. And so this is what this is about, and that is abortion on demand and killing babies in their mother's womb. And it's evil. It's satanic. You're exactly right. Appreciate the call, Rob. Monty in Culpeper, Virginia. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Welcome to Focal Point.
You know what, Walker? You are an absolute bright spot in the Wildmon family, and whatever third generations are. Just remember, there were the Black Robers, which were called the Black Robe Order of preachers here, and especially in Culpeper back in the 1700s. Anyway, just to make a short story, the Democrats take off whatever wolves in sheep's clothing. They take that wool off. They put on their black robes. They practice and do what voodoo, hoodoo, whatever it is that they practice. But the Lord Jesus Christ will bless them one day if they just turn their hearts to Jesus Christ and the saving grace. And Walker, Culpeper is a shining light for AFR radio. You guys are wonderful. And I've had 38 interviews in my hometown school. I've taught every grade from preschool into college. I've never been hired in my hometown, but it just shows they can accuse you of anything, but they can't take your soul and burn it because the Lord's taking care of us all.
Amen.
God bless you, Walker.
Thanks, Monty. I appreciate the compliment. I'll pass that on to my brother and sister and the rest of my family that you think I'm one of the best Wildmans in the family. What do you think, Rob? Do you think that's, am I being too big-headed here?
You're one of the best. Out of three, yeah, you're one of the best.
Yeah, I'm kidding, folks. I'm not arrogant, but I do appreciate the comment, Richard. Not Richard, Monty. Sorry about that. Richard in Illinois, we'll take the last call today. Richard, what's on your mind?
Yes, I understand why, thanks for taking my call, first of all. But I understand why, the Senate committee would have to consider any serious accusation, but I fail to understand why this was a credible accusation.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's a very valid point there, Richard. And the fact is, what you're getting at, Richard, is if the FBI is requested to reopen the background check, the first thing they're going to ask is, what new would you like us to review? And the Democrats are going to say, well, there's this one person who says something happened 36 years ago, but there's no corroborating witnesses. And at that point, the FBI should say to the Democrats and to Jeff Flake, we don't investigate hearsay. We investigate facts. And we investigate issues where there is corroborating witnesses and at least a hint of credibility. And so I think, honestly, for the FBI to reopen this background check, I think it'll take about 10 minutes. You review the facts, Dr. Ford makes a claim, she cannot find any corroborating evidence or any corroborating witnesses. The FBI says case closed. Case closed, nothing to see here. Thanks for tuning in to Focal Point this Friday edition. Stay tuned. We'll be back next week on American Family Radio.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The sexual revolution is falsely promised to satisfy the human heart.
God has a better way. If we follow God's prescription.
Dr. Michael Brown offers hope